For centuries, we've heard tales of SINBAD the sailor, legendary merchant of Baghdad. He and those like him voyaged to fantastic kingdoms more than 1,000 years ago. These fabled Arab explorers sought the great riches of the Orient. Crossing nearly 10,000 kilometers of open ocean. But their exploits were never proven. Until now. A chance discovery in the treacherous waters off Indonesia reveals a seabed covered in gold, silver, and ceramics. It may prove the existence of a global seafaring culture centuries before we imagined possible. Will it reveal the secrets of two great ancient worlds and the brave sailors who dared connect them? Over 1,100 years ago, an international crew of men set sail on a perilous journey. They are returning home from Tang Dynasty China with rare ceramics and gold created by 9th century Chinese craftsmen, desired by the rest of the world. For centuries, China has traded with the West over land via the Great Silk Road. But near the end of the Tang Dynasty, the route has become too dangerous. According to legend, Arab traders take to the seas, creating a maritime silk route. Their ship packed with priceless Chinese items. These men are gambling that this trip will make them rich beyond their wildest dreams. If they survive the cruel seas. They traveled safely from the Middle East, all the way to China. But on their return voyage, they make a fateful decision. Here, off the coast of Indonesia, the reef-filled waters are so deadly that ancient sailors call the area the Treacherous Bay. For reasons we may never know, the captain chooses this route. The gamble fails. His ship and its treasure are lost forever. Or so it seems. Belitung Island, Indonesia, some 1,100 years later. Tilman Walterfang was lured here in the late 1990s in search of undersea treasure. An engineer by trade in his native Germany, Walterfang maintains a lifelong passion for ancient art. He comes to Indonesia on a quest for big discoveries. And in 1998, he receives a tip that would change his life. Local fishermen find a mound of ceramics on the seabed. Based on the designs, they appear to have been created between 600 and 900 AD in Tang, China. If so, the find is incredibly valuable. Treasure hunting is a multi-million-dollar business in Indonesia. Walterfang believes that as soon as word got out, other salvagers will descend upon the wreck. He and his crew have to act quickly. The area Walter Fang secures is here, Batu Hitam, or the Black Rock, a notorious reef.
Yeah, we are right on the top here of a reef which is called Batu Hitam. 150 meters from here is the original location where it sank. It's around 2 miles from shore of Belitung Island.
On his first dive, Walter Fang descends 17 meters. Hidden beneath a coral mound is what appears to be an untouched wreck.
The moment I saw the first pieces, I was really excited about having something right in front of me which was untouched for more than 1,000 years. It was a little bit like the feeling of opening an emperor's grave or opening a pyramid.
Walter Fang hires Mike Flecker, an Australian maritime archaeologist, to manage the excavation.
The whole vessel was buried. It had 1,100 years of sediment accumulated over the top of that. It had various things like some iron, creates big coral growths, and that concretes together. So there's a massive amount of material burying the wreck.
Underneath the coral covering are countless jars stacked to the brim with bowls, plates, vases, and jewelry. The team recovers some 60,000 pieces, mostly ceramics, but also precious items of gold, silver, and bronze.
It's about 22 metres you're looking at for the length of this vessel. Very beamy, probably 7-8 metres wide. But we've recovered this huge number of jars on this one very small ship. I still can't fully comprehend the volume of this cargo fitting on such a small vessel.
Walter Fang and Flecker believe they have made a remarkable find.
There's nothing written, there's no archaeological reports. Nobody's aware, nobody within the archaeological community at least, is aware of any shipwreck of this type of any era in the world, essentially.
Ancient records tell of Arab and Persian fleets that traversed Asian seas, but no such boat from the time has ever been found. Most wrecks would have disintegrated after a few hundred years. This one was covered by a layer of sand that prevented worms from attacking the wood. Every element of the wreck is potential evidence that the maritime Silk Route existed. A bronze mirror bears a compelling clue, with the inscription, "Smelted 100 times in the city of Yangzhou on the Yangtze River in December 758. Without a doubt, the treasure is from Tang Dynasty China, but Flecker is eager to identify the age and origin of the ship. Radiocarbon analysis dates fragments of the wooden hull to between 700 and 900 AD. During that era, only Arab and Indian craftsmen were building ocean-going ships of this type. The wooden fragments provide crucial evidence of the boat's origins.
We actually took off a sample of this and we sent it to various people for analysis, and it's come back that this is Afzelia africana species.
Afzelia africana is a hardwood once prized by the ancient Arab boat builders. The wood is found here, across Africa from Senegal to Uganda.
If it's a timber coming from Africa, it's far more likely that it was just transported the short distance up to possibly Yemen or Oman, and the vessel was built there.
The hull's position on the seabed also allows Flecker and the others to determine the ship's shape. The layout of the ship's frame is clear evidence that it is a traditional Arab dhow. Some 20 meters long, with 2 masts about as tall. Its hold is packed with cargo. The crew lives and works in whatever space is left on deck.
It's an absolute benchmark. There's nothing been found older. It wasn't expected to be found. It's an Arab ship. They haven't even been found in the Middle East. Here it is in Indonesian waters. It's amazing.
Nautical archaeologist Nick Birmingham has devoted his life to recreating the world of the medieval mariners. Flecker sends him the clues gathered from the wood fragments.
Well, this one should be coming round now.
Like many ships in the region, the dhow was built without a single nail.
The ship was entirely stitched together. Certainly a good 200,000 stitches involved. The seams between the planks were held together, holes drilled about 2 centimetres either side of the seam, 4 centimetres apart.
The complex system of stitching holds the dhow's planks firmly together even in rough seas. Paper bark is put between planks and underneath the stitching to prevent water leaking into the hull through the holes.
The great thing about a stitched vessel is when it's severely damaged, you can take all the stitching out, replace the damaged parts, put it back together, nothing wrong with it. Whereas a nailed vessel, a bolted vessel, those fastenings are not really easily removed, and so you can't take the thing apart and put it back together again.
As the boat's story begins to emerge, Walter Fang searches for a home for the cargo. For some skeptics, the find seems too good to be true.
Well-known experts, they just did not believe because it's too good to be true.
Experts cannot believe that all of these items came from one ship. Walter Fang is even accused of faking the artifacts. But the commercial art world is eager to buy the best pieces for the open market.
Famous art dealers came along and tried to do some cherry picking. The big auction houses showed real interest, and there was some pressure from also internally to go quickly for an auction and to sell it piece by piece. So I started slowly feeling the responsibility I had to keep this valuable piece of evidence together and preserved.
The ultimate value of the Tang shipwreck goes far beyond gold and silver treasure. If the cargo is split up, the full story of the ship may never be known.
When I walked through the door, I knew it was valuable. I did not realize how valuable it was. And it was only later when different scholars would come, and through their eyes, we could see the simple objects in different ways. Today, I would say the treasure is different things to different people. To artists, it's actually 1,100-year-old artifacts of very simple and elegant designs. To historians, there's a missing puzzle to many stories.
The discovery of the Arab dhow is rewriting the history of cross-oceanic trading. But until now, nothing is known of the mariners on board or of their final destination. Who sailed this treasure-laden ship nearly 10,000 kilometers across the world? The great legends of the Arabian Nights tell how SINBAD and his crew sailed the seas, trading in rare goods for vast wealth. Who were the real explorers of the age? Did SINBAD and his crew really exist?
You go back and look at your wonderful SINBAD tales. That's a case of a captain-merchant combined. He was lorded over everything that happened on board that vessel. You'd have to be incredibly adventurous, you'd have to be a huge risk taker, the fellow that's investing all his funds in a voyage like this, but the returns obviously would have been immense.
The captain is most likely a merchant from Arabia or Persia. He probably gambles all he owns on this voyage, on the purchase of this ship and the hire of its crew, on the chance that this journey will make him rich beyond his wildest dreams. The captain recruits his crew from all along his route.
It's very likely that trading in Southeast Asia, they would take on Indonesian mariners, Malays, Thais, could be from anywhere, Chinese perhaps, although Chinese don't seem to have been terribly keen on going to sea.
Besides the captain, the single most important man on board is the navigator. The crew relies on him to deliver them to China. His knowledge of the stars and seas will be what keeps them alive in the next 12 months.
Navigators were the second most important people to the captains, and often, sometimes even as equal as the captain in terms of the hierarchy on board.
These men trust their lives to the skill of the navigator and to the monsoon winds. According to the SINBAD legend, their journey may have begun in the Persian Gulf in September or October. The northeast monsoons take the dhow first across the Arabian Sea down to South India, then down to Indonesia and through the Malacca Strait. Finally, if the dhow survives the hidden reefs of Indonesia and the storms of the South China Sea, it will reach the east coast of China. Conditions on board are brutal. This dhow is designed for trade and little else. With cargo stored safely below decks, the crew work, eat and live out in the open air. A wooden box filled with sand serves as a makeshift oven. Their diet is dried fish, fresh if lucky, rice bought along the way and water they have hoarded for the long journey across the open ocean. It's possible that the limited space doesn't allow for difference in rank. Captain and crew eat together. The captain's one privilege is a palm frond shelter. This is his cabin and quarters for the entire journey.
Most of the crew would have been just sleeping forward, sleeping on the deck. There would have been no hold inside to sleep in. It would have been all at deck level. So there would have been your key component and then essentially your rabble, your fellows that are just the muscles handling the sail.
The crew must maintain the hand-sewn sails constantly. Their fastenings are crude and tear easily in high wind. Better to lose a sail than for a storm to rip off the mast. A few personal items are scattered across the seabed. Glimpses into the crew's lives on board. A small bone die, perhaps used by men to gamble, playing games to pass the long hours at sea. And an item that points to the hardship on board. Rough seas and dangerous work mean injury is common. Men fall sick. The navigator burns aromatic resin to cure the injured. resin still intact more than 1100 years later in the belly of the Tao. The incense is aromatic, but ineffective. Shipboard death is common. The captain leads the surah of mourning from the Holy Quran. The body is wrapped in a white shroud to be dispatched into the ocean. When men die along the way, the captain must find new recruits at foreign ports. After nearly a year at sea, the survivors reach their goal. The captain and his men have crossed nearly 10,000 kilometers of ocean to arrive here at the great port of Yangzhou. For centuries, Yangzhou's fortune has come from its position along the Yangtze River, its docks funneling goods to the landlocked north. Today, it still evokes the wild frontier atmosphere of long ago, when it was the door to China's riches.
This is the very important port of Yangzhou. Today, it is as busy and as lively as it was more than 1,000 years ago. This is where all the foreign business deals took place during that period. There were Arab ships here, Indian ships, Persian ships, and all types of Chinese ships. This city was an incredibly important port along the maritime Silk Route. The heavy traffic we see here is representative of a scene over 1,000 years ago. We can even compare Yangzhou to cities like America's Las Vegas and New York City. This city was famous not just for trade, but also for entertainment.
Yangzhou sells anything the rest of the world desires. 9th century China is becoming rich from its exports. But some Tang officials are suspicious of foreigners. They fear dangerous new ideas. Yangzhou city is restricted territory for foreign sailors. The Tang officials act as the middlemen. All deals must go through them. The captain is sequestered in the city. He can't move freely in Yangzhou.
The Chinese had a great distaste at this time for foreign customs, but the more foreigners who came to China to swear loyalty to the emperor, the more this reinforced the idea that the emperor was truly the son of heaven.
The captain, like other Arab merchants, is perhaps both diplomat and businessman. He may be commanded by the Tang court to carry priceless gifts to neighboring kingdoms as tribute. And in exchange, he may be allowed to order rare treasures his clients at home crave. China's porcelain, gold, silver, and spices. The 9th century Western world hungers for the natural bounty of the East. Rare spices such as star anise are desired by the great trading kingdoms of Southeast Asia, such as Java and Sumatra.
Interesting, then, when we're diving on the seabed, there was a couple of areas we were actually excavating through a sea of star anise. It's the spice from China, which amazingly survived under the anaerobic sediments.
The captain may sell Chinese spices to Southeast Asia, Asian goods to India, and whatever he can buy along the way to the Middle East. If he stops at every port, he will return home with many riches and stories to tell of his adventures in foreign lands. By October, it is time to leave. as the captain prays for safe passage home. The crew packs the cargo in straw bales and massive jars. Every available inch beneath the deck is crammed with goods for sale. The captain can only hope that the winds will bring him and his men back to the distant Middle East, alive. When the monsoon winds change direction, they blow from the northeast, transporting the dhow away from China towards Indonesia. As on the initial trip, the captain and crew are entirely dependent upon the skills of their navigator. He has a crucial job with few tools at his disposal. In those long ago days, there are no magnetic compasses or reliable charts. He must keep the ship's course by visible landmarks and the stars.
They took samples of mud even at various places. They would look at the mud, they would look at the kinds of birds and sea animals that they caught. They used many different sources of information. So navigation by just the stars is one of the major approaches that they used, but they had lots of other little tricks too.
At sea, the navigator has one secret prized by Arab sailors. At night he measures latitude with a kamal. The kamal is held up against the horizon. It is a rectangle of wood attached to a piece of string used to measure alignment with the North Star. It's at best an imprecise science. A rough sea destroys any clear horizon. Clouds obscure the star's position. One slip and the ship and its treasure will be lost forever. A decade has passed since Walter Fang began excavating the treasure dhow off Belitung Island. It has cost millions to conserve and research the precious artifacts.
It was a big burden. It was actually not expected that the conservation process and research process will take so long and will be at the end so expensive.
Even as the search continues for a buyer willing to take the entire 60,000-piece collection, each item must be individually desalinated and cleaned. 1,100 years of coral gently removed.
I understood he sold all his belongings to find the financial resources. And I often used to say, any other salvager would have just taken the best pieces, sold them off, and not worried about the whole collection of 60,000 pieces.
Finally, Walter Fang finds the buyer he wants. The government of Singapore promises to buy the entire collection. The price, a reported $32 million US. It is a record sale price in the world of Asian art. The ship's treasures will now be studied as a single collection, eventually to be exhibited for all to see, as it once was, a unique treasure dhow. More than 1,100 years after it disappeared, the treasure now lies here, in high security storage in Singapore.
Well, if you look at these two rows, there are 1,600 of such ewers, and that represents only a very small fraction of the kind of wares that's found on board the Belitung wreck. In fact, there are 60,000 pieces of ceramics found on board the ship. And what you're seeing right now is 2 rows, but there are another 27 rows of such ceramics.
It's highly unlikely that this was a normal trading voyage of the 9th century. This is probably a unique cargo. There probably wasn't 60,000 Chinese bowls every year. This may have been a once in 20 years kind of a voyage, if that. So this cargo is probably quite unique. There could not have been very many of these.
The ceramics intended for markets across the world give scientists a window into time. Each jar contained dozens of identical bowls, plates and cups stacked high inside, some marked with a manufacturing date 826 AD. Compelling evidence of large-scale mass market trading. The Chinese craftsmen even paint Islamic patterns to satisfy the Arab buyers' tastes. Three pristine plates are covered in Mesopotamian designs, painted with a cobalt pigment from Iran. Historians had thought the Chinese began making such plates in the 14th century. But this Dao shows us that China was already offering them to the world 500 years earlier. A wealth of knowledge can be gleaned from the treasure. But some 1,100 years in corrosive seawater has taken its toll on many delicate objects. So many pieces are completely covered in coral that it is impossible to decipher their design. Restorers don't know where the coral stops and the object begins. X-rays reveal the beauty lying beneath and provide crucial information to conservators.
But we have to take another X-ray. The X-ray help you very much. You see, if you take a look to this object, you don't know where the corrosion is more or less. You can't see it. So if you take an X-ray, you know exactly what you're looking for to find the original surface.
The pieces that have emerged from the waters of Belitung appear to be some of China's finest. A snake-headed ewer made of white china, 1 meter tall. A gold bracelet, dishes, and an octagonal cup. A silver flask marked with pairs of birds, perhaps signifying love. Was this a wedding gift? The breadth of this Tang collection is unmatched. The Dao's treasure is rewriting history.
The discovery of the Tang treasure boat is both a mystery and a dream. It will require generation after generation of study to unlock the answers to the questions it has posed.
Professor Chi is given access to the vault where the most valuable items are locked.
This is very interesting. Why has this swastika symbol been carved on the plate? This symbol was not popular during this period. So this is very puzzling to me. Furthermore, there are similar designs to this on the porcelain and pottery. So this has triggered new academic ideas. So here's an assumption. Were these artifacts made for trading abroad? Did a foreigner order these items to be manufactured in China?
Is the golden plate an order from an Arabian merchant or a Javanese king? Or was it a gift from the Tang emperor himself to another ruler? Among the most notable objects is this gold cup.
This is an extremely exquisite item. It has a total of 8 sides, and such shapes are very rare in China. If you look closely at the people on each side of the cup, all of them are either dancing or holding instruments. If you look at their posture, it's obvious that this is a Middle Eastern cultural dance.
In Tang, China, the artistry needed to make such items is closely guarded, passed down from father to son. A trainee gold worker would need around 4 years to learn the most basic skills. Only the best could create such a cup of pure gold, weighing 624 grams. Perhaps it was a present from a Chinese emperor to a Middle Eastern king. The Arab captain may have been ordered by the Tang court to secretly escort the gold safely to a neighboring empire.
I don't believe that common traders or sailors could have brought these gold artifacts on board. It might have been the captain, but not a common businessman, because all these items are too precious, they are too expensive.
China restricts export of its precious gold reserves. We may never know why the ship was carrying countless treasures. Could it be illegal trading? Perhaps the captain is bribed by a rich merchant to smuggle it out. Someone who will pay anything to flaunt the rarest of Chinese treasures. We may never know, but one thing is certain. The conservation and study of this treasure will take years.
I hear from the experts who come through our door, and they come from all over the world asking to see the treasure. From their eyes, we realize that this is really a very valuable treasure. And I once said to someone in Singapore, I said, this is going to take all of my life to study. And they turned to me with the most serious look and said, it's going to take a few lifetimes to get it studied properly, a few generations.
As art historians pore over the treasure, scholars ponder the fate of the boat and its crew. By mid-October, the treasure-laden dhow should be sailing to the Middle East from China. But the ship makes a sudden turn south towards Java in the opposite direction. The experts are divided on why the captain makes this fateful decision.
Now, where it was heading to, that's a dilemma. It's in Belitung Island, well off the normal trade route down through the Malacca Straits and back across past India to the Middle East.
Perhaps they are forced to wait for favorable winds to carry them home. Or perhaps they are forced to stop and wait for better weather. Nick Birmingham thinks it's possible the captain had little choice.
Some years more than others, that monsoon comes down pretty hard, black clouds, and it rains almost consistently. And so for days on end you've got very poor visibility and not a destructively strong wind, but too much wind to sort of have much option about where you go. You're not going to try and tack against it. You've pretty much got to go with it. That might have been the situation that pushed them down onto Belitung. Not entirely sure of where they were. Or possibly fairly sure and terribly worried.
Perhaps Belitung was the closest toll point where the captain had to stop and pay local taxes. Or the men have been at sea for 1 month by the time they reach the island. Are they low on food and fresh water?
they were only 1 mile from shore, they may have been fishing. We found fishing net weights and sinkers and things like that. They may have been replenishing some of their food stock.
Whatever their reason for being in the area, the crew has chosen a dangerous location to rest. Thousands of miles from home, in a foreign sea, do they know they have entered the treacherous bay? The crew of the Treasure Dhow have gambled everything on the journey home via Indonesia. Why, no one will ever know. But it is a decision that will lead to disaster.
When they got down into Indonesian waters, that's highly unlikely that the skipper or the navigator or both had been travelling throughout the South China Sea, which is very treacherous and relies heavily on local knowledge, the location of all the reefs. It's one thing to say where you want to go and know where you are. It's another thing to know what you're running over.
As the dhow passes Sumatra, it must risk the narrow straits past Belitung Island. Hidden reefs lie everywhere across the slim channel. Even today, fishermen fear the straits.
Along this coastline here, from shore up to 3 miles out, is full of coral reefs everywhere, and so must be pretty dangerous.
The shallow waters require careful maneuvering. With the sun hitting the water or clouds blocking visibility, even a local pilot might miss the reefs.
He may have hugged the coast. Maybe that's what he was doing down the coast of Belitung, hugging the coast to keep away from the reefs that were in the open water. And then you'd stop at night, you wait for the next day, you look up your mast, you hope the sun reflection off the water is not too great, because then you see nothing anyway, and carry on.
The danger here is definitely if you're bad weather or sailing in the night, you just can't see them. If it's raining, you can't see them. Yeah, and if sometimes very, very heavy winds coming up here, and I can imagine that such a heavy loaded vessel was very difficult to navigate through the reefs here, especially in bad weather.
They sail close to the shore, perhaps 3 kilometers off land, to prevent being blown into the shallows. But what the dhow's crew does not know is of another danger, unpredictable and deadly. Was it a sudden storm, so furious and fast, there is no time to escape?
You get these storms further north off Sumatra, they actually call them Sumatras, and they come out of the blue, and they can last for maybe 1 hour, maybe 1.5 hours, but they get straight away up to 40 knots. Sometimes you smell it coming. You can actually, smells like damp earth. You don't even have time to take your sails down, and they could just be capsized.
They crossed a reef that was just deep enough for them to get across, but they bounced. The keel, the bottom of each trough of the wave, crashed onto that reef, almost tearing the bottom out of the ship. She keeps going, she's under sail, but rapidly settling into the water.
In this scenario, would the crew have had just minutes to react? The wind may push the dhow towards the reefs. The crew would rush to lower the sails, fighting to slow the ship down. But they are too late. Are the crew, men who have survived the Indian Ocean and the dangers of the Arabian coast, helpless? Is the boat, with its precious cargo and its men, no match for the treacherous bay? The dhow does not even have time to break up. It comes to rest as a whole, 17 meters below the surface. No human remains have survived the millennia under the seas. It's possible that a few men may have fought their way to shore. Their ship, lost to the ages, its secrets hidden to the world by the waters of Belitung for more than 1,000 years to come.
It's almost indescribable, the feat that this vessel has achieved, and the fact that we've now found the archaeological evidence. It's not just a text which you can interpret in many ways. It's there on the seabed, full of this stuff. There's no doubt about it.
This marine Silk Route gives our society a real understanding of how societies use constant and changing relationships to learn from each other, to understand each other. This is what has kept societies growing and developing throughout history.
This incredible voyage might have been one of the last of its kind. In the mid-9th century, Tang China is torn apart by internal war. Relations between Muslims and Chinese fall apart. It's possible Arab and Persian ships no longer try to reach China's shores, and direct trade between China and the Arab world ceases. Soon, all that is left are stories of a distant seafaring age. Until today, now this single vessel gives testimony to one of the ancient world's greatest trading routes, and to the daring men who gave birth to the legend of SINBAD the sailor.